Hello, welcome back to YCFT. Today we are talking about, two things. We are going to do a quick spoiler-free review of Hammer's return with Dr. Jekyll. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Hammer's return, how successful we think it's been, and what could happen next, or what they need to do next.
Yes.
Dr. Jekyll stars Eddie Izzard as Nina Jekyll, and what's the Hyde persona called?
Rachel
Hyde.
Yeah.
And it revolves around a guy called Rob, played by Scott Chambers, I believe he's called.
Scott Chambers.
He is most known for, he produces a lot.
He's produced more than he's acted.
Yes. He did play Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I think, did he exec produce that?
He exec produced that, yeah.
So it's probably one of his bigger
I think so. It seems
acting
to be.
roles.
Yeah.
He plays a recent convict who gets a job looking after the extremely famous Dr. Jekyll.
But very reclusive.
Potentially shamed.
Yeah.
From the medical world. Dr. Jekyll needs help around the house. So a job that he feels like, or it seems like he shouldn't be able to apply for because of his background.
Yeah.
But he needs a job so that he can have custody of his daughter.
Yeah, who has leukemia.
Yes. And strange things start to happen.
Everybody
knows the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so
famous.
It's not even the first time that Hammer's done it. What was the name of the director of this one?
He's a guy called Joe Stevenson, and it's not his first rodeo, but from what I can gather, this is probably the biggest budget he's had to work with. He's directed a few little things here and there. He's done a bit of TV, but yeah, this seems to be biggest thing to date.
Yeah, and it's not even that big. Again, trying to find the box office and budget for it, because it had a limited release only in the UK. I think the budget's been about $1 million, maybe a little bit more.
Maybe. It's been really hard to track down.
Yeah, and right, might as well talk about Eddie.
Let's talk about Eddie.
Let's talk about Eddie.
How can we not talk about Eddie?
We kind of fell into the trap of assuming, because Eddie is a trans actor. In spare time, in their own time, goes by Susie
Izzard.
Susie Eddie Izzard. But still goes professionally as Eddie, because that's, it's his brand. And I believe he's okay to be called he.
Yeah, he's fine with having pronouns intermingled. He's said that very, very clearly. And I think he's also fine with being called Susie or sometimes being called Eddie. But yeah, because he's a very famous British actor and comedian, mainly a comedian. That's how a lot of, us in the UK know Eddie. So I think he's fine for publicity and whatnot to be referred to as Eddie.
So we kind of assumed, I think more so you, then you introduced me to the film afterwards. We assumed that by casting a trans actor, they were going to go along the Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde story, which was Hammer's last foray into this.
1971.
Yeah, which shows a male Dr. Jekyll taking the former and turning into a female Hyde.
Oh my God, yes.
And so the story surprised me because it doesn't go along that at all.
No, it doesn't at all. It couldn't have been more wrong.
It couldn't have been more wrong, and which I'm kind of glad that they didn't just remake this, because this is why we don't have any merch for that one, but we do own Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, so we thought I will have that out as a display. We watched an interview with Eddie afterwards.
Promoting Dr. Jekyll.
And he was kind of asked why him being trans wasn't a part of the story. And he's an advocate for trans actors being cast in roles just based on their merit, not just because the plot dictates that they need a trans actor.
So
the story doesn't necessarily have to revolve around it.
It didn't need a trans narrative. And yes, I mean, of course, he's absolutely right. And I mean, obviously this is a very new film, so we don't want to go too heavy into spoiler territory at all. But yeah, we will say right off the bat that Eddie Izzard being a trans actor being cast in the role of Nina Jekyll is not necessarily, it's actually nothing to do with the story at all.
I think it's referenced once in the opening.
I think there's a headline shot, there's a montage of newspaper articles about Nina and how reclusive she is, and it mentions, trans doctor.
Yeah.
But that's literally it, guys. It's not a part of the story. And yeah, So Hammer is very familiar with Jekyll and Hyde. This is not its first adaptation of the story. And I think I'm right in saying that the last one was in 1971 with Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which I think it's considered by many to be one of the better Hammer films. It's definitely one of the most creative. And yeah, set in Victorian London, it mingles a little bit of Burke and Hare. It also mingles a little bit of Jack the Ripper. And basically Ralph Bates as Jekyll, when he takes the potion, he transforms into a feminine persona. And it's a fantastic film. Like you watched it for the first time
Yeah.
recently, and yeah, I did fall into the trap when they announced that Eddie Izzard was cast. I was like, "Ooh, are they going to do like a Dr. Jekyll, Sister Hyde kind of thing? Are we going to see Eddie as Jekyll and then like Susie as Rachel Hyde?" I don't know. I was just kind of going down that train of thought, but yeah, couldn't have been more wrong, but also very happy to have been proven wrong. It's like once again, Hammer have done something very different with the Jekyll and Hyde story.
I was going to say, was Eddie the right person for this role? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's a very over-the-top performance.
Knocks
and
it
I
out
love it.
the park. Owns every scene that they're in. Like, when we were looking at reviews of this, it seems like critically it's kind of like all over the place. Audience scores at like 95%. But again, like, the audience score, it could possibly go down because, that's it, it's limited release, only in the UK.
Yeah.
I think fans of Hammer are the ones that are going to be going for it. We actually won tickets to the premiere.
We did.
But we couldn't go. Because it was like on a Wednesday at 6 o'clock in London and we were both working till 5. We couldn't get the day off. We couldn't get to London in time.
No, we could not.
So
that was a shame.
But we got a chat to Hammer, which was nice.
Yeah.
And basically say, look, we're sorry. Can you please just give the tickets to people who can actually make it?
Yeah.
But we managed to find a cinema near us that was showing it when it got released. So we got to go support it. What do you think of the actual film?
I really liked it. So we watched the trailer twice and I was a little bit dubious about the trailer initially because it felt like they were just kind of replaying the same scenes over and over again, and it was kind of hard to get like an idea of what they were going for. The trailer didn't really give a lot away, which I can't in hindsight I do actually kind of like. But overall, I did really enjoy this movie. I mean, it's you've basically got Nina and you've got Rob, and these are the two biggest characters that living in this secluded house and beautiful like English countryside. So two very extreme personality differences. Like you've got Nina, obviously played by Eddie, who's very extrovert and who's very like even just her whole like physicality. She's very like over the top and very kind of like grandiose in everything she does. And then you've got Rob, who's an ex-junkie, like not long out of rehab and not long out of prison. And he's very meek and he's very timid and very introverted. And so seeing the two of them together is really cool. I enjoy their scenes together. It is a slow burn.
Yeah, I think Rob, he has a really interesting nervous energy about him, which
very twitchy.
I really like. It's like, weirdly, it feels, the way he acts in certain scenes, I'm like, it's very English.
It is very English,
And I know people that act that way when they get nervous. So it felt very real for me. And then, also when talking about like Eddie as Nina, Eddie as Rachel.
Yeah.
There isn't, right, we're going to say, because there isn't a physical transformation yet. It's
isn't.
all personality. And early on in the film, I think you can quite easily tell the difference between the two personas.
Mm.
I think even when you've got like the likes of like Rachel pretending to be Nina.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what you need a good actor to be able to do something like that. When you've not got a physical transformation to say who is who.
You need an interesting actor to be able to do that. And I think I've seen some reviews so far that like I've been reading a lot of the more like unfavorable reviews, and a few people have said that point of that like Hammer maybe could have gone a bit harder on the scares. Like we wanted to see.
It's not a scary film at all.
At no point were either of us scared in watching this. Like there was a few jump scares, like questionable how hard they landed, but it is a slow burn. It's much more cerebral. But yeah, like a lot of the negative reviews are saying like they needed a physical transformation, like they wanted to see the monstrous Hyde, and I disagree with that. I actually like how physically there is no difference. There is literally no difference between Rachel and Nina. It's it's almost like it's a split personality thing. It's not a physical thing necessarily, but I don't know. Like for me, I personally did enjoy it.
I thought the film opened really strongly.
Yeah.
And I think it ended quite strongly, but you think the ending was a little bit rushed.
I think it was rushed.
The middle kind of, not bored me, but lost me a little bit. I think the biggest thing is budget was holding it back.
Yeah. And it was interesting because we saw an interview with Joe Stevenson, the director, with Eddie, and even he said it was tricky for him because the film he envisioned was not the film that he could make within the budget that he had, so he was very much aware.
Was it like the flashback scenes
well.
that we have, which I really like? I'm a big fan of like
scenes.
Black and white flashbacks, but one particular thing kept in colour, like the Sin City effect. And
oh yeah.
as I'm not saying, I don't want to spoil anything, but the flashbacks don't really give us enough information.
No.
I think they were so limited to what they could do.
Everything, yeah, I agree with that.
The house
It's
was doing a lot of work for them.
The revelation of how this all came to be is kind of wrapped up almost a bit too quickly for me. But I loved the first half, and I loved, as I say, just seeing like Rob and Nina kind of interact together in the house and slowly sort of get used to each other. There is another character as well called Sandra, who is Eddie's kind of like housekeeper and some minder, like very protective over Eddie, and she's the one that conducts the interview with Rob at the beginning. And she's almost like a Mrs. Danvers like character, like the Daphne du Maurier story, Rebecca, like, very protective and very, very, very stern. And she's played by Lindsay Duncan, who's a great British actress. Like, she's really good, just like inherently very like intimidating. So I enjoy seeing all three of them together in the house. And the house itself that they shot it in is absolutely gorgeous too. But yeah, I think is like, as we started to get into the second half and near the end, it did just feel like a bit, like boom, 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 like we're rushing towards an end here, and we like I think it's budget. It's a purely budgetary thing, which is a shame.
It would work really well as a play. This story.
Jekyll and Hyde was a play.
But I think like this particular one, I could see it in a play working really well. And Rob, his character is named after the author, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a quick moment like where he finds documents about himself that Sandra's been, she's been keeping tabs on him and done background research, and it's just really quick, but you see his name is Robert Stevenson, and obviously Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Jekyll and Hyde.
Really like that. Is that kind of all we want to say on this film? Like, would you watch it again?
I would watch it again. I'm watching it for Eddie, and I'm very much aware, like it was his performance that really, really like just struck gold. It was something. It's a lot of fun. It's very entertaining.
It's very camp.
It's camp, very camp.
Gothic. It is Hammer. That is what Hammer has always been, very camp. And I had a lot of fun.
I did. I also had a lot of fun, and we had like a few appearances from other very like classic British actors as well. Like Simon Callow has a very brief cameo in the movie too. It's always a joy seeing him. I would definitely watch this again, but I would just like to stress, like, again, this is not a scary movie, but it is an entertaining movie.
Yeah, entertaining, but it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
No.
Even when we were in the cinema, we were trying to. There wasn't a lot of people in this screening.
No.
And we were trying to work out what the demographic is. So we got a couple late 20s, early 30s. We had two middle-aged men. We had a mother and a daughter, and we had an elderly couple. I'm like, what demographic are we?
I know.
What demographic are we going for here?
I know, exactly.
I could not work it out.
And then, like, in the classic, British way, we all just kind of, like, walked out the cinema very quietly.
Yeah.
It's very hard to gauge reaction to it.
Let's kind of discuss Hammer. That's the second part of this video.
Yes.
The first time Hammer returned was The Woman in Black.
Yes, which is 2012.
Yeah, which was, obviously we had a big star, Daniel Radcliffe, fresh off Harry Potter. Yeah. Not a massive budget, but a bigger budget than this. And it did really well. And Hammer just couldn't ride that wave.
No.
They did a few little films.
They did a sequel afterwards.
To it. They did a sequel to it, and they just never... They didn't ride it, and that's a big problem. And I've researched a little bit into, like, obviously Hammer's changed hands. I think at that time it was under, Stephen Oakes was his name?
Yes. Yeah, Stephen Oakes.
And so a few films, they obviously did The Lodge, which the pandemic didn't help. I think otherwise that might have done fairly well.
Yeah.
At one point, it sold a lot of its distribution rights of its catalogue to try and like bring some money in. And I know a few years ago it merged with another distribution company to become Hammer Studios.
Simon Oakes, sorry. I think
Simon Oakes. And so this movie started filming before Hammer was involved.
Yeah.
But a few years prior to that, they said, right, we're back. We want to tell new stories. We wanted classic film, like classic monsters, but with some new stories. We're going to do. Well, they said they were going to do Dr. Jekyll.
They did announce that.
They're like, we're going to do The Abominable Snowman, which I would love.
They've said they're going to do a Jack the Ripper movie as well. That's been on the roster for a long time.
But then they just never got moving. So it's like they saw that this film was getting made. Hammer got involved 2 days into filming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think they'd always intended. The director always intended to be like a gothic horror sort of Hammer-esque.
Yeah, it seems that way.
We can't really find what effect Hammer had on the film, in the filming, other than the director saying, we started directing a few scenes that would be a bit more like Hammer-esque, a little bit more gothic. To me, looking at the colour palette that they went for, the score that they went for, and the titles they went for, it's like, oh, that is very Hammer.
Yes.
So, and it's unclear how much money Hammer brought into it. But this film wrapped March 2022.
It did.
And it's only came out like a couple of weeks, like
yeah, exactly.
October of this year. What happened? Why did it take a year and a half to bring this movie out? Because watching it, I'm like, there's not a ton of post-production work that would be needed on this. There's very few visual effects in it. So that, I think, is also part of the problem. Did Hammer not have the money to finish the film?
We don't know.
We don't. It's a boss sell.
We don't
but
know.
In August of this year, Hammer was bought by John Gore, or the John Gore Company.
Great name.
John Gore is a British theatre mogul. I believe he's won a couple of awards. So he bought it in August, and 2 months later, the film has had a Leicester Square premiere and been released. It's like he's bought and been like, "You've got a movie. Why haven't you released this movie?
Shout
Let's get
about
it." So we don't know. Yeah. We don't know what state the movie was in at the time. Whether or not they've had to come in and like finish a few things off. But so the question is, what does Hammer have to do? We think, right, they have to announce something. They have to announce what are we going to do next? And I think the announcement has to be sometime this year. They have to start shooting something next year.
Yeah, it has. There needs to be a follow-up, but it needs to be a strong follow-up because, as much as we enjoyed this movie, Dr. Jekyll, I'm really happy it got made and it's out there now, but it doesn't have the star power that Woman in Black did, over 10 years ago. It doesn't have a Daniel Radcliffe-like figure. It's not drawing in a huge crowd, and as far as we know, it definitely doesn't have the box office figures as well. So, if Hammer is back, like if it is definitively back, and it wants to be a competitor to all the other big horror production companies out there, it needs to go hard, and we need a follow-up. But we also need a name, I think, attached to it.
I think they need to make a deal with a streamer.
Yeah, I agree.
Something like the UK's side of Shudder would do incredibly well, because this movie was made for cheaper than what most streaming movies are made for. And I think it looks really nice considering the budget. Obviously, that was the big challenge, trying to get the film to look as nice as it could with, limited resources. So if you say, look, this is what we can do with this much money. If you give us a little bit more, we'll make more, and you can have the name Hammer. I think that's kind of the direction they want to do until their name's back enough for them to...
Yeah.
But one thing I think John Gore's making a bit of a statement, because straight away, and this must have been like the new thing that they've added in, the Hammer title sequence before the movie was an Avengers style one. So it's going through all their properties with like blood going around them and stuff like that, and eventually it's like Hammer. I love that. I love that they're going through like this is who we are. But then in almost as big a letters as Hammer, a John Gorkum.
Yeah.
He's put his name on it.
He's a very proud custodian.
Yeah, he's proud to have it, and I think if you're going to buy something, the fact that the movie has came out so soon after he's bought it, like I said, after a year and a half after being finished, movie like this should have been out the same year. There's no reason they couldn't have got it out quickly.
No, that's
so
true.
It's like, right, bought it, let's put the movie out, slapping my name on it, I'm going to go to the premiere. It was all over the premiere as well.
It was, yeah.
Now that his name is attached to it, if Hammer fails, it's going to look like he's failed.
Yeah.
So that to me is a statement.
It is absolutely, it's a statement to put your name on something, and it's also like, I've seen a few comments floating around on social media of people saying like very pejorative things about John Gore, being like, we don't know who the hell this guy is. It's like Hammer is famous without you. Like, stop plastering your name everywhere. We don't know who you are. You've not proven yourself yet. And it's like, yes, that's true, but it's also like, this is clearly a very proud man, and like he is proud to be associated with the Hammer brand, and I have to respect that. Like, if I owned Hammer, I'd probably be plastering my name all over credits.
I imagine people who are really into theatre will know who he is.
I imagine so. But yeah.
We've discussed this when I said Hammer obviously is a brand, but without a big, steady comeback, how much of the Hammer fan base is still there? The Hammer fan base is getting older, and they need what the Woman in Black did was bring in a new audience,
which was genius.
But were they there for Hammer or were they there for Daniel Radcliffe? They were there for Daniel Radcliffe.
They were. They came for Daniel Radcliffe, but I like to think they stayed because it was genuinely.
But then Hammer didn't provide anything.
No, that's the thing.
There
were a few things like The Lodge came out, and I actually did okay. Like, not box office wise.
I get we both mentioned The Lodge because we can't think of any other film that came out.
Yeah, like there was The Lodge, and I think that was.
That's things like now they're back. Like, I think they must have realised they can't just go off Hammer as a recognisable
the
brand
brand is
anymore,
not
because
enough.
it's not as recognisable as it used to be.
It's not enough.
Only to the older generations. They need to make new things enough to be like, we are Hammer.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Hammer as well. It's like when they announced, that initial slate of movies, like years and years ago, they're like, right, we're doing a Dr. Jekyll movie. We're doing a movie on the Abominable Snowman. We're going to be doing a Jack the Ripper movie. Like, they were always very honest about the fact that, yes, they are committed to making new films, but they are also equally committed to revisiting a lot of their older catalogue as well. So that gives me hope in that they don't intend to stray too far from, their origins. Like, Hammer is gothic. It's inherently gothic, and it always has been. And I think it really kind of needs to stay that way as well. And, the last two big films that they've done, 11 years apart, Woman in Black and Dr. Jekyll, which, even then, like, they're on different kind of wavelengths. They are gothic in nature, they're spooky, supernatural stories. And I want Hammer to remain in that kind of sphere. But yeah, we need a big film. We need them to make a splash again.
Yeah, that's why they need to make a couple of deals so they can get the budget to get, like, I can't imagine you want to sink a fortune into making
it's like
stuff straight away.
No.
They need to make a couple of deals, get a couple of movies behind them, and then make Hammer a recognisable brand again for the new, because they need a new generation of fans.
You do. And, let's be real, the landscape at the minute, gothic horror is back. I mean, you look at Mike Flanagan and how well House of Usher is doing on Netflix. I mean, that, could you be any more gothic? But, obviously it's updated, and it's kind of sexy, and it's violent, and it's spooky, but it's also gory. It's like there's a way to do it. And, oh my God, now I'm just, envisioning Mike Flanagan working with Hammer. That would just be
Well, I think
epic.
Mark Gatiss would probably work with them
my God.
straight away.
Mark Gatiss
and Stephen Moffat would absolutely work with Hammer.
Mark Gatiss just, adores Hammer. Like, that documentary he did, History of Horror, the second episode is just a love letter to Hammer. Yes, get Mark Gatiss involved. He'll come up with something great. It's like there is potential, and there's a lot of opportunity there. I think Gore just needs to be a bit basically strategic with what he does.
Obviously, Hammer went away because they couldn't compete with Universal and whatnot.
The big movies, the big Hollywood movies.
If they'd stuck around, they would basically be what Blumhouse is at the moment. Obviously, Blumhouse make small to medium budget films that make a lot of money, but they have obviously a distribution deal with Universal. Hammer need to kind of prove themselves and get themselves into that position.
Yeah, definitely.
Because whether or not, obviously, I think people's liking of Blumhouse films kind of is on a massive variable.
Ebbs and flows.
But they give new directors a chance.
Yeah, they do.
New writers a chance, and they take risks. And because the films are so, like Five Nights at Freddy's made all of its budget back before it even went to theatres.
Yeah.
So it's guaranteed to make money. That's what Hammer need to do: make films that look good, aren't going to cost them a fortune.
Yeah.
But get their name out there.
And don't stray too far from their bread and butter.
Yeah.
As well. Hammer is never going to make a movie in the realm of, I don't know, Sharknado or something like that. It's not their thing. That, there's an audience out there for that, and there are production companies that are providing that. Hammer is its own unique thing. And I'm confident it's going to stay as, within that gothic domain.
Maybe they could bring Quatermass back.
Oh my God, yes.
I think a new Quatermass would go down really well.
Yes. But, in terms of, just circling back to Dr. Jekyll, I am proud of Hammer for getting it out there.
It took them a while.
It did take them a little while. And they did something different. They've always been very creative and inventive with gothic stories.
Even if they did tack themselves onto a pre-existing project.
They did. Yeah, it was a shock to me when I found that out. But still, it's got Hammer's fingerprints on it, definitely. And I want to be excited. I want to be really excited for what they're going to do next.
We've been excited before.
I know, this is the thing. We've been burnt. We've been scorched and burnt too many times. But I'm hoping this is the start of something. And as much as we did enjoy Jekyll, I'm hoping it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
From here on in. And budgets will increase. And the audience will increase. And Hammer is back.
We would say track this down, but it's probably going to be quite difficult to find a screening of it. Have a look. Obviously, we only found one in our area that was showing it, but it'll end up on a streaming platform relatively soon, and be hopeful. Let us know, obviously, we definitely want to do Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Have you got any more notes before?
No,
Wrap
I
things
don't.
up?
I don't on this one.
Let us know what Hammer films you would like us to look at, because we are planning next year. Like we mentioned our anniversary one. We are going to tackle Dracula next year. We're going to do all the Christopher Lee Draculas over several videos. I personally, like I say, I want to do this one.
Oh yeah.
You really want to do the Quatermass experiment.
I want to do Quatermass in the Pit.
Quatermass. But I need to see Quatermass experiment. I've seen Quatermass in the Pit.
Lead up to that. That's my
Yeah,
all-time
I
favourite
want-
Hammer movie.
I know there's a series as well. Drop a couple of Hammer films that you would want us to check out.
But also, like, what stories are out there that you think would be a good Hammer property to, like, any spooky stories you've read recently that you think Hammer would be, perfect for?
They're very active on Instagram at the moment. You could probably message it to them.
You could probably just, send them a message.
That's one thing I noticed. Like, they're advertising. They actually advertise. Like, I was seeing a couple of bus adverts, a couple of posters. Like, very few. But they went hard on Instagram.
Oh my god, like every day they're doing stories.
Yeah, and they still are.
They're
and I'm like,
it up.
it's like, all right, so they've acknowledged this is the landscape of how you need to advertise movies.
Yes, they're in the 21st century.
Yes. Right, so thanks for stopping by. Yeah, those is a little different type of review to what we normally do.
Yeah.
We didn't just want to review the movie. We want to review Hammer today, right?
Hammer.
What happens now?
Yes. Yeah. And we don't know, but we're excited.
Yeah. So yeah, we will see you next week.